Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to watch today's video and hang out with me for a little bit. And guys, today I want to run you through the plan that I have to win the Toyota Series tournament up at Lake of the Ozarks next week. We have our final Plains Division tournament of the year up there, and I want to sort of go through the process that I'm going to approach this tournament to win this tournament, because the way this tournament's set up, that's what I'm going to try to do. It's like some tournaments you go there and try to fish for points or try to, get a check. Some tournaments you really try to win. And I'm going to go through how my approach is going to be for this tournament, how I go about winning based upon other tournaments I've won in the past. So I think you guys might find this a little bit interesting. And also, guys, one of the lures I plan to use next week in the tournament is my Blaukat Throwback jig here, guys, from Cumberland Pro Lures. This is going to be one of my primary weapons. I love fishing a jig this time of year. Also, guys, I'll put my jig link, my Blaukat Throwback jig link, in the Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video if you guys would like to order some of them. And we also have my new Blaukat Throwback Power Finesse jig that we just came out with a couple weeks ago. I was actually down at Table Rock yesterday at Table Rock Lake, and we caught a bunch on the little finesse jig down there. So I'll have all those links in the description. And one final thing, guys, anyone interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, just go to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler, and you can shoot me a private message for details. So appreciate you guys putting up with those plugs there. Okay, now here's the deal with this, guys. Like I was talked about, every tournament's different as far as how you're going to approach it. I just finished up with our BFL season, Ozark Division. I finished 14th in the points for the year, so I qualified for the Regional Classic at Grand Lake in October. I'm going to use the same approach there, because a tournament like a regional or a tournament like I'm going to fish here at the Toyota Series, some tournaments you fish to try to win the tournament. And in this particular tournament, I had a really bad first tournament of the season, and I knocked myself out of position to qualify for the Toyota Series Championship. So given that, I don't have anything to lose except to go out to really focus on trying to win this tournament. And it's a different approach. If I was like, on the bubble for the points or something like that, I would approach this tournament completely different. But since I'm not, I have the freedom to try some off the wall stuff to see it works. Now, how I go about this is like when I'm trying to decide what I want to accomplish out of a tournament, whether it be points or just getting a check or trying to win the tournament or whatever, it has to do with a systematic approach on how to fish that particular tournament. Because all the tournaments that I've won before, all the Bassmaster tournaments I've won, all the regional tournaments I've won, every tournament that I've won over the past 30 years in bass fishing, the common thread amongst that win is that you win out of an area. You don't win out of a pattern usually. Pattern fishing used to be pretty productive years and years ago, but now what you have to find out in a tournament for the most part is a general area of the lake that has the winning type fish in it. Because based upon the time of the year, there are certain sections of the lake that are simply high percentage areas that can produce the type of fish that can win a tournament. There's a big difference between producing a tournament grade winning fish and a check grade fish. In other words, say for Lake of the Ozarks, if it takes 12 or 13 pounds a day to make a check, a lot of those fish can be caught with a certain technique in a certain part of the lake or more diverse part of the lake. But if you're going to catch the 16, 17, 18 pounds a day that you need to win this tournament, Lake of the Ozarks, you have to have a specialized area and a specialized approach in order to win that. And a lot of times when you're focused on that specialized approach, the area, the window that you have for success or failure it's a narrow window of success and a big window for failure with that. Everything's got to line up perfect. You got to be in the right place at the right time. You have to identify the correct approach and the correct baits. You have to have your way go. The uncontrolled variables have to go your way. Your boat has to perform flawlessly. Your trolling motor can't break down. You got to get the right boat draws. You got to fish an area that's not getting covered up with other anglers. Tournaments are hard to win, guys. Bass tournaments are extremely hard to win. I mean, like I said, I've won my share of them. I've got second in a bunch of them. And even the guys at the very top level, the 1%ers in this sport, they rarely win, even over long periods of time. So bass fishing is not like a lot of other sports simply because you have so many controlled and uncontrolled variables. Given that, here's my plan to win the Lake of the Ozarks tournament, or what my approach is going to be. Number one is I have got to realize that I can't compete with the dudes that live up there. If you look at the Lake of the Ozarks standings and tournaments up there, you will notice the same 10 or 15 guys over and over and over again. The Lake of the Ozarks, these are the dudes that live there. These are the dudes that have hundreds and hundreds of brush piles out. These are the dudes that use the cheater box most of the time. That is just the reality of the situation. They've perfected the cheater box. They perfected fishing deep brush piles. They got tons of them out there, and they're hard to beat on Lake of the Ozarks. They're extremely hard to beat. The only way that you can compete against these guys on Lake of the Ozarks is by identifying and narrowing down a specific dock fishing technique, because you can compete and you can win against the cheater box users on the deep brush piles off of boat docks, but it's not as easy as what it says. There are tens of thousands of docks on Lake of the Ozarks. It's literally wall-to-wall docks. So when somebody says, I'm going to fish docks at Lake of the Ozarks, that doesn't tell you anything, because if you fish Lake of the Ozarks, most of the time you're fishing boat docks. There's a big difference between catching bass or not catching bass on a boat dock, and catching little bass and catching medium-sized bass and catching big bass on a boat dock. And how you determine that, it's how the dock's positioned. It's like the specific type of dock. It's where the fish are positioned at on a dock, and it's using the right lure on that dock. So in other words, you have to hit all those variables perfectly. You have to hit the section of the lake that's on fire. You have to identify the dock. You have to narrow it down, because there's so many docks on Lake of the Ozarks, you can burn up your whole day fishing one cove. If you pull into any cove on Lake of the Ozarks, you can waste half your day fishing every dock in a cove. So you have to narrow it down to specific docks with a specific technique. Okay, now given that, I understand that. I've fished Lake of the Ozarks my whole life. I know the docks the fish live on. But you have to figure out the bait that's going to fire those big fish up. So you've got two schools of thoughts here, the way that I'm thinking how I'm going to approach this tournament. Number one is I've got to have a lure that I'm getting bites on, that's producing bites. And then I have to have a lure that gives me the opportunity to catch a big fish. It's like very seldom is it the same bait. Occasionally it can be a jig. Occasionally jig can get you a lot of bites and a big one. But a lot of times it can be something like you're catching fish on a shaky head or a Texas rig worm or something like that, and then you may catch a big fish on a glide bait or a big swim bait, or slow rolling a big spinner bait, or throwing a chatter bait around the dock. And my plan in this tournament is to really try to keep with that small lure category window that produces that combination of big ones and bites. And I know what that is. And on top of that, I'm finally going to have some practice time in this tournament. If you guys have followed me all year long, I have missed practice for probably 25% of the tournaments where I got no practice, and the other tournaments I got one day or half a day. I have never had over 6 hours of practice for the last 2 years for any tournament I've been in. So in this particular tournament, I'm going to spend 3 days of practice on it in preparation for that, and that's going to allow me to figure out everything that I'm talking about. I'm probably going to spend 2 days in what I consider the high percentage dock areas of the lake, and then I'm going to spend 1 day in what I consider, just a wild card, some type of a dock pattern with some off the wall lure that nobody's using that might be working, it might not be working. Something to sort of give me, you've got to give yourself an opportunity to win. And it's like, I've got so many different lures that I think could possibly catch a big one there, that I've got to identify what that is. You might catch a big one on a topwater. You might catch a big one on a 10 or 12 inch worm. You might catch a big one slow rolling a 3/4 ounce spinner bait. There's a lot of options to do there. But for me in this tournament, the way that I plan to try to win this tournament, or to win this tournament, is I'm narrowing my bait selection down. I'm going to have maybe 6 lures, and that's it. And I'm really going to spend the time trying to identify how to trigger those bigger fish. I learned quite a bit at the Ozark Division BFL last weekend. The third cast of the day, I caught one over 5 pounds. I understand how those big fish are positioned on docks. I just have to refine this pattern and maximize my time on the water. But anyway, guys, it's just because you say you're fishing to win the tournament doesn't mean you're going to. It's like but you've got to give yourself the opportunity. If you don't, if you fish in fear in tournaments, and if you fish to catch a limit of fish, and you don't fish to every single minute that you're on the lake, you're trying to catch the quality fish that'll win the tournament, you'll never win the tournament. Every tournament that I have won in my career, every single tournament, I have stayed with the lure all day long, or the one or two lures that I know produce bigger fish. I don't, if it's 1:30 in the afternoon and I've got 3 fish in the boat, in those tournaments that I've won, I don't pick up something like a little weenie worm or shaky head and try to fill out my limit. I stay with those 2 baits that are catching the big ones. Sometimes you'll catch those last 2 fish and sometimes you don't, but that's just what I have figured out about winning tournaments. Winning tournaments, like I said, it is special. It's a feeling that, I wish everybody that fish tournaments could experience. It's like if I could relate to you guys what it's like to win a Bassmaster tournament, it's a surreal experience. And it's like once you feel that, you're never the same again. That's why guys that win tournaments, they want to win again and again and again to sort of chase that feeling. I get it over there. So anyway, guys, I'll keep you updated. I'm going to start practicing next Monday. I'm going to practice Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week. I'll give you the practice report every day, and hopefully be holding up that trophy by the end of the week. So talk later.